You're listening to Tony Graham here on Binjay 91.5 from Studio 2, and I have Matthew Dickerson on the line, and we're doing Tech Talk this morning. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Tony. Great to be chatting to you again.
Yeah, well, we've got an interesting day today, let's face it.
Always interesting, Tony, always.
Yeah, well, that's very true. It's just enthralling for the audience, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
So let's kick off with the first little gem, shall we?
Sure.
Backpacks. Now, could the simple backpack be revolutionised by technology?
Like
what do you reckon?
I'm a believer, Tony, that everything can be revolutionised by technology, but this particular backpack is quite interesting. It's doing two things. One thing it's doing is making the backpack actually easier to carry, but the second thing it does as part of that is actually generate some electricity. So it's got some little shock absorbers on the sides of the backpack. So effectively, if you think about your backpack and the part that goes over your shoulders can lock the backpack in fairly solid. So this keeps the backpack fairly solid in terms of the actual supports. But on those shock absorbers on the sides, your backpack sits there, and as you walk, rather than that backpack bouncing up and down in the middle of your back, which can get quite annoying for anyone that carries a backpack, especially any length of time or even trying to walk a bit faster, the backpack itself slides up and down on those little shock absorbers to actually take away some of that annoyance of the backpack bouncing around on your back. So as you slide up and down, or as you move up and down, the backpack slides up and down in reverse. So it actually makes it more comfortable to carry. And so that was a small thing just to make a backpack easier. But then they went a step further and they said, if we actually translated some of that motion, that up and down motion, to generating electricity, we wonder how much electricity we could generate. Now, the answer is not very much, but enough, for example, to charge a watch or enough to run a small light. It wouldn't really be enough to charge a phone, although having said that, you could put some charge into a phone, but it would still continually go flat, just go flat slower. So it's not quite enough power to charge your phone, but some of those small electronics are quite interesting. So they talk about maybe 14% of the actual motion of that backpack going up and down is enough to actually generate electricity. So of that overall energy, 14% is converted. And it actually reduces the amount of jiggle, if you like, on the backpack by 21%. So makes it more comfortable to walk and actually produces a bit of electricity along the way. So I think quite a nice little idea. Still in the prototype stage at the moment. The developers say that they've still got a bit too much weight in there. They're trying to reduce the weight of it a bit further. At the moment, this prototype weighs 3 kilograms. They're going to get that down to 1 kilogram, and then you'll see it in stores everywhere.
And all the school kids will soon be wearing them by the sounds of it.
Well, I can imagine, school kids obviously is the target market, I suppose, for any volume backpackers, but I can see a lot of people that go hiking, a lot of people that use their backpacks on a regular basis out and about. I think this would be fantastic for them.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, here's another question I got for you, and I reckon I know the answer to this one already. The pandemic and the impact on teenagers and the online experience, has it had much of an effect? I would say you bet.
Yeah, and your gut feel, Tony, it's absolutely spot on. There has been a surge in teens seeking online help. The sexting and cyberbullying are the two main areas that they've seen issues around there. And what you've seen, if you do a comparison, 2020, you take some sample months during the middle of the pandemic, compare that back to 2019, and you've seen people seeking help for sexting is increased by 55%, and help for cyberbullying has increased by 39%. So quite dramatic increases, not small increases. And again, you might see some increases year on year of single digit figures, but those big jumps are really around the pandemic. And it's kind of that perfect storm, I suppose. You've had kids at home more often, so they've been sitting at home in the privacy of their home or the privacy of their bedroom, for example. And you've also had parents that have been fairly tied up trying to deal with a whole range of things with the pandemic. They might have been at home working, so they haven't been able to supervise the kids as much. They haven't been in that school environment as much, so it has actually led to that, I suppose, perfect storm of being accessible to the internet and basically being able to work out things that are happening and then maybe not being that happy with some things that are happening. Even in the 5 to 12 bracket, I mean, those other stats were in the 13 to 18 bracket. In the 5 to 12 bracket, just kids searching for being safe on the internet in that age bracket increased by 21%. So there's some pretty significant increases there. Reports of adult cyber abuse have doubled. Youth-based cyberbullying has increased by 32%. And the really scary one, Tony, when you start to get to that illegal and harmful content, child sexual abuse material, for example, that's increased by 123%. And image-based abuse, and I don't need to paint the picture there for you on that, you can imagine what some of that stuff is, that's increased by 172%. So there's been some quite dramatic increases. There's a whole range of things that have changed around the world because of the pandemic. This is just another one of those things. And again, it's really about a response, both a community and government response. But there is a good website. The Office of eSafety has guidelines for online safety. And that'd be something I'd recommend parents sit down and look at and then have a discussion with their kids. That's at esafety.gov.au.
Yeah. And what's the main vector for all this, I would say, would have to be, you'd point the finger directly at, and mostly at, social media, I have to say.
You're absolutely spot on there. There are lots of positives with social media, but there are also negatives with social media. And unfortunately, it's the argument about social media being bad. That might be one argument put forward, but it's the people that use social media. Social media can be used for good or bad. It's the people that make the difference there. And so it's up to us, I suppose, to be vigilant about that, but also up to all of us to behave nicely, I suppose, with social media, Tony, which sometimes doesn't happen.
Yes, well, I don't know that you can leave it up to everybody to do that. So, but we'll move on to the next topic.
Sure.
And I guess, now, I wouldn't mind actually, Matthew, picking up $100 million in prize money. And I don't mind if I save the planet at the same time. So there is such a scheme, isn't there?
There is. It sounds like a pretty good combination, doesn't it? Elon Musk has been promising to give away some of his billions of dollars. And unlike people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, he hasn't actually made a large contribution yet. And when I say large contribution in terms of his net wealth, well, he's just put up $100 million prize money, which still isn't much of a dent in his net wealth, but it's not a bad little prize pool. And that's in conjunction with an organisation called the X Prize. And that's a not-for-profit organisation that focuses on a whole range of different competitions and trying to basically help the planet. And so this competition's based on carbon removal technology. It's basically a 4-year contest, so it's not a quick little contest. You won't pick up that $100 million the next day. But in the first round, there's 18 months for people to put forward their ideas, their conceptual plans, even their working models of extracting carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And you've got 18 months to develop that one. And those 15 teams that are selected from that will each get a prize of $1 million. So that's not a bad starting point. And then as it goes forward, those 15 teams then, so the competition's been narrowed down to those 15, will compete for the grand prize. The grand prize, first prize, is $50 million, second place $20 million, third place $10 million. So those 15 teams will be competing for that. And basically what they've got to do is they've got to demonstrate a solution that can pull carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere and lock it away permanently in some sort of environmentally benign way. So effectively, they want to be able to take that carbon dioxide out, but then they also want to be able to scale it. So you might be able to take out 1 tonne of CO2 per day as part of the competition, but the idea for the whole competition is to get to the point where you can take out gigatons of CO2 per day. And so the concept from Elon Musk here is he's saying we don't want to be carbon neutral, we want to be carbon negative. Because we've been carbon positive for so long, we need to be carbon negative to try and save the planet. So Elon's doing some great things to try and save the planet. This $100 million might be the best $100 million he's ever spent.
Very true. And you've been listening to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson on Binjam 91.5. And right now we'll be getting back to all the great information and the music. But don't forget this afternoon, keep on listening to Binjam because we'll have another edition of it.
Great. Thanks,
Thanks,
Tony.
Matthew.